right, I did remember to send y'all out Friday's recording, right? Can somebody let me know? If y'all got an email on Friday at some point. I think I did. Yeah, I think I did too. All right. Okay, so as far as your second quiz goes, grades looked pretty good. Y'all did a good job on the short answer, so thanks for getting that taken care of and done. And I had to be reminded, I'd forgotten that I had put an essay question in the test, but thankfully one of you reminded me to grade that number 17. So if you got it right, somewhere in the comments on your quiz, it should have just said correct. For some reason, I thought that would be attached to number 17. It's not. So I'm learning. This is the first time I've used some of these new quiz tools that are available to us. Next quiz that'll open up tomorrow over chapter 6 and 7 will just be multiple choice. There will be no short answer part to go with it. So any math problems, anything that you're expected to work out will be in the multiple choice. So you'll have answers there. And then quiz 4, I'm going to give you some workout problems again. I thought that worked out pretty well, and hopefully y'all didn't have too many troubles with getting that uploaded or anything like that. All right, I know Friday was a pretty heavy day, and today we're going to start using that information that we developed on Friday. So now hopefully the information will start to make a little more sense as we're applying it in a real setting, a real world type setting. Oh, and you do have homework on chapters 6 and 7 due tonight. That's what your quiz is over tomorrow. So that's the utility theory and then all that production and cost that we did on Friday. All right, so let's move into perfect competition. So perfect competition is the first of our market structures. We're going to be looking at four market structures this semester. So what a market structure does, it tells us how the firms in an industry are organized. Okay, how the firms in an industry are organized. And so when we're looking at the features of market structure, it's going to include the number of firms. And we're going to talk about each one of these in a second. How similar or different the products are. It's going to talk about how easy it is to get into or exit the market. And lastly, it's going to talk about the way firms compete against each other. So our 4 market structures we're going to be looking at. If you think about a spectrum, perfect competition is on one end of the spectrum. And as we move along the spectrum, we'll go through monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and at the other end, we'll have monopoly. And so as we're working through these 4 market structures, we'll see how things change as we move along the spectrum. So what we'll do is we're going to start with perfect competition, then we'll go, which is one extreme, then we'll go to the other extreme of monopoly, and then we'll look at the 2 in the middle that are combinations of both. All right, so in perfect competition, we have lots and lots of buyers and sellers. So our firms are teeny tiny little firms. And this is going to be important. Our firms sell what we call a homogeneous product. Homogeneous means identical. So the firms are selling an identical product. If we piled a bunch of different companies' products in a room and had the company owners come in, they would not be able to tell who produced what. They are completely identical. And when we talk about what products we're talking about, you'll see that. The barriers to entry, we say, are very low or don't exist. So firms can easily open up shop and start selling a product in a perfectly competitive market. Okay, so super low or no barriers to entry. Anybody can join this industry. And lastly, our firms don't compete. So let's talk a minute about what each one of these features really means for our market here. All right, so because our buyers and sellers are numerous and our sellers are very, very small, they're each just buying or selling a tiny fraction of the total amount in the market. Okay, so they are not really important in the sense that if we lose a customer, it's not going to matter. If a few firms enter, it really doesn't affect things. And so what we say is that our buyers and sellers have no control over the price. This is a really important feature of perfect competition. It doesn't matter what a buyer or seller does, it will not change the price. Okay, we're going to come back to this in just a second, why this is so important. All right, so homogeneous product. So it is standardized or it is identical. And when you look at the types of goods we're talking about in perfect competition, agricultural products, so broccoli, corn, wheat, oranges. If you threw a bunch of broccoli in a room, the different farmers would not be able to tell which broccoli was theirs. And it also includes basic commodities. These are the things that you would see exchanged on a futures trading market, for example. So gold, silver, foreign currencies, and then again, those agricultural products. So these are the types of things. So perfect competition, it's useful to look at this extreme, but it doesn't encompass a lot of industries. Not a lot of industries are organized in this way. All right. The low barriers to entry or no barriers to entry. So what we're saying is there aren't any natural or artificial barriers that are keeping people out. So some of these barriers, and we'll learn more about them in the next chapter, could be the cost of building a plant or entering, having to have a patent or a license, having specific knowledge, having government approval. We don't have any of that here. So if I want to start farming broccoli, farmland's not that expensive here in Texas. I could get some farm equipment. It cost me a couple $100,000 probably to start up, but that's not prohibitively expensive. There's nobody saying you can't be a broccoli farmer. So there's no reason why I couldn't do this. Okay. And once we're in the market, it's really easy for resources to move around. So if I want to go out of the business, I can sell my tractor to another farmer. I can sell my land. My farm hands can find jobs someplace else. All right. We don't have any competition. If you think about the types of industries I've named, you don't see foreign exchange people advertising on TV. You don't see wholesale gold and silver people advertising on TV. You do see, Mike's Gold Buyers, but you don't see a lot of that. You certainly don't see Farmer Brown advertising his broccoli against Farmer Jones. If you see any ads in agricultural, it's probably more like the Florida Orange Juice Growers Association, or it is a specific brand of orange juice that is buying oranges from lots and lots of orange farmers. So not a lot of competition, and there's no reason for these firms to compete, which we'll see in just a second. So because our firms are so small, they are called price takers. So they're going to look at supply and demand in the overall market, and whatever that price is determined by the intersection of supply and demand, that's the price they will charge. Okay. The firms are so small, there's nothing they can do that will change supply or demand. So even if one of these little teeny tiny firms decides to exit the industry, supply will not shift. It's just too small relative to this huge market. Okay. So the most extreme thing a firm can do is exit the market or enter the market. And even that won't shift supply if one firm does it. Now, if lots of firms enter or lots of firms exit, we'll start to see supply moving, but not one firm all by itself. The other nice thing about being a price taker is because these firms are so small, they can sell all they have at the market price. Because as a broccoli farmer, I'm limited on how much broccoli I can produce. And because I'm not producing a lot compared to the rest of the market, I can sell it all at the market price, which is nice for me. I know I'm going to sell everything I have. So we are going to look at the flour market. So wheat and flour is what we're going to be looking at. And I'm going to switch over to my document camera and show you what I mean by a price taker. So we're going to be looking at the wholesale flour market. And let's look at supply and demand for flour. So this is our overall flour market. We've got our demand and supply. So this is all firms supplying flour, all customers buying the flour. And that determines that the price in this market is P1. And so what we're going to be doing is looking at one single flour producing firm. So I'm going to draw that right next to the graph I've got. I'm going to put a dollar sign because we're going to be putting a lot of stuff on this graph. We're going to be putting prices. We're going to be putting costs. So I'm just going to call it a dollar sign instead of a P. And I'm going to bring that price of P1 right over. Okay. And what my firm graph looks like is a straight line. This is my demand curve for that one firm. It should be horizontal. I turn my paper a little bit, maybe it'll look more horizontal. Okay. All right. Do y'all remember what we call this kind of demand curve? What is it? I think chapter 5. Yeah, it's perfectly elastic. Flat is perfectly elastic. Very good. Okay. So what this demand curve means in terms of our firm is if we try to charge 1 penny more than P1, we'll lose every customer, right? Can't charge any more because they'll just go next door to the other farmer and get their wheat and make their flour. If we're going to try to charge anything more than what everybody else is charging, nobody will buy from us. Okay. So we cannot go above this line because we'll make no sales because they're perfectly responsive. And there's no reason to go below this line because we said our firms can sell all they have if they charge P1. Usually we have to lower the price to sell more. But in this case, we can sell everything we produce at P1. So there's no reason to ever lower the price. So this is what the firms will charge for every single one of their units of output. All right. So firms have two things that they get to pick. They get to pick price and quantity to try to maximize profit. But in this case, price is already given to us. Oh, that shouldn't be apostrophe. So in perfect competition, price is given. So the only thing the firm has left is to pick the right quantity. All in the name of maximizing profit. All right, so let's start with some data. So I'm going to use one of my handy dandy little templates. It just makes my life a whole lot easier. So we are looking at perfect competition in the wholesale flour market. All right. And we're going to start with our output of flour. All right. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is in tons of flour. Okay. Tons of flour. And our price has been given to us by the intersection of market supply and demand. Put that at the top here because I'm going to add some more to this title. And so the price that we are given is $160 a ton. So it doesn't matter what our output is. Our price is $160. So now that we have output and price, we can calculate our total revenue. And as I'm doing this, okay, so this is given. This is given. This one we can calculate as P times Q. So can't do anything with this top one because when output is 0, revenue is 0. I guess I could put 0. All right. So 1 times 160 is 160. 2 times 160 is 320. 3 times 160 is 480. 4 times 160 is 640. 800. Is that right? Yeah. 6 times 160 is 960. And 1120. If I'm ever doing anything that you're not following along with, please stop me and ask me questions. All right. And then we need our total cost. This is always given. All right, so your costs are given to you and they are $200 if output is 0, $260 at quantity 1, 300, 325, 400, 500, 660, and 910. So that's given. So now we could calculate our profit, which we will say that these costs include both implicit and explicit costs. So this is our economic profit, which is just our total revenue minus our total cost. So we're just going to take our revenue minus our cost, negative 200. 160 minus 260 is negative 100. 320 minus 300. We're finally on the positive side here with $20 profit. 480 minus 325 is 155. 640 minus 400, 240, 300, 300, and 210. All right, so I got a couple questions for you. First of all, what's our fixed cost? Okay, Devin, good. How'd you know that? 200. Anybody want to tell me how Devin knows it? Or Devin can tell me? Okay, when revenue is 0, total cost equals fixed cost. Okay, don't forget that. So I didn't give you the fixed cost, but it's there. You know what it is. We will need to be able to distinguish between variable and total cost at some point down the road. Not right now, but we will need to do that. So to do that, we need to know what that fixed cost is. All right, my second question is, how much flour should we produce to maximize profit? Okay, I got a 4 tons, I've got a 6 tons. Well, all we have to do is look right here. Where's the greatest profit? Well, the greatest profit is 300. And so that's telling us it's either 5 or 6 tons. Okay. Not very satisfying because we don't know if it's 5 or 6. Devin told me 6. Devin's actually right, but we don't know why yet. Okay, so in this case, we just look, we see, okay, 300's the most profit we got, and that happens at 5 or 6 tons. So we should produce 5 or 6 tons. All right, but that's just not very satisfying. What we're going to do right now is I want to graph my total revenue and my total cost so we can see a graphic representation of our profits. And what that looks like, if you look, our total revenue starts at the origin and it's just going to increase by $160 for every unit of output. So that one's really easy. Okay, so I'm got my costs there because we're looking at costs. And so my total revenue is just a straight line with a slope of the price 160. And then my total cost curve, it rises pretty fast, then it slows down, then it rises fast again. So y'all can plot the points on your own time, but what it looks like is something like that. Kind of does this wavy thing. And I didn't draw that very exaggerately, but what we're looking for is it's in this region here. In this region here is where revenue exceeds cost. Okay. So this is where our profit, our positive profit's going to be, is somewhere here. And we're looking for the place where the distance between these two is the greatest. And we're going to go ahead and go with Devin's choice of 6 tons. And at 6 tons, this is a total revenue of 960 and a total cost of 660. So this little distance here, my green, This is our profit of $300, that distance. So this is one way to graphically represent our profit so that it's visual and we can see it. That's not how we're going to do it though. So I need y'all to know how to read and interpret this, but you don't have to ever recreate this particular graph. I will never ask you to draw this particular graph. All right. Everybody got that? So I can go back to our table now. All right, so let's go back to our table. So we need some more information. The first thing we need is something called marginal revenue. Right? Marginal revenue is the extra revenue earned from selling one more, in this case, ton. Okay. How much extra revenue do we get when we sell one more ton? Now we have a formula for marginal revenue. It is the change in total revenue divided by the change in output. But it's not really necessary in perfect competition because how much extra revenue do we get when we sell the first ton of flour? We go from revenue of 0 to 160. How much extra revenue is that? Yeah, it's 160. And if we go from selling 1 to 2 tons of flour, how much extra revenue do we get from the second ton of flour? And how much revenue do we get from the third ton of flour? That same 160, right? In perfect competition, and only perfect competition, our marginal revenue is equal to the price. That's in perfect competition, but only perfect competition. So we're going to have price, which is the same as our marginal revenue. So that's easy. We don't even have to do anything here. Okay, this is not always going to be true though. All right, the other thing we need to do is calculate our marginal cost. We learned how to do that in the last chapter. Okay. Remember, our formula for marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in output. Marginals always have those deltas, those changes. So remember that. So what we're going to do, and this one's also going to be easy because our change in output, it's going up by 1 each time. So we're going to do the change in cost divided by 1 each time. Remember, that's not always how it is. If output is changing by a different than 1, you need to divide by the change in output. But so right now we're going from, we can't calculate marginal cost here. So we go from 200 to 260, that's a change of 60 divided by 1. So our marginal cost of the first unit is 60. From here to here, our cost is changing by 40 and output is changing by 1. So 40. From here to here, 300 to 325, change of 25 divided by 1. 325 to 400, that's a change of 75 divided by 1. 400 to 500, that's change of 100. 500 to 660. And 660 to 910 is, I don't want to have to think about it, 250. That should have been easy enough. Okay. And remember, total cost is how much did 2 cost? 2 cost 300. How much did the second one all by itself cost? It cost 40. How much did 3 cost? Well, 3 together cost 325, but the third one all by itself only cost $25. Okay, so keep that in mind, how to interpret what we're doing. Otherwise, there's no point. All right, so to profit maximize, find the quantity, the output, where our marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's going to be our profit maximizing, but let's go through this one by one. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare our marginal revenue to our marginal cost, one by one by one. All right, so the first ton of flour brings in $160 worth of revenue and costs $60 to produce. So we definitely want to produce the first ton of flour, right? Brings us in 160, only cost us 60. Okay. So yes, produce that and let's check the next level. The second ton of flour brings us in 160 in revenue, but only costs us 40 to make. So we definitely want to make the second ton of flour as well. The third ton of flour brings in 160 in revenue and costs us $25. So we definitely want to make that one. Fourth ton brings us in 160, only costs us 75. Keep going. Fifth ton brings us in 160, only costs us 100. The sixth ton brings us in 160 and costs us 160. So our revenue exactly equals our cost. We want to do that and stop here. Because if we go here, we bring in 160, but it costs us $250. Don't want to be there. We want to stop here. Now, the reason we do this is we don't know. If we stopped here, we don't know what would happen here. So what if this were 159 instead of 160? We would definitely want to produce it and get that extra dollar per ton, right? If it were 159.99, we would still want to produce it because we are greedy capitalists who want to squeeze every penny out of this process. And the only way we can make sure we've gotten every possible penny of profit is when we go all the way to where these two are equal. Okay, so that ensures us you got everything you could get out of this and you've maximized your profit. So that's why we're going to stop at 6 instead of 5. So our process is to compare marginal revenue to marginal cost. And as long as marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, we keep going until we find the output where they're equal. Does that make sense to everybody? Is everybody kind of okay with that one? Okay. And it's to squeeze every possible penny of profit. All right. So we call this the golden rule of profit. Remember, pi is profit maximization. Find the output where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. All right. So I want to graph marginal revenue and marginal cost together. So we have the overall flour market. That's where we start with this. I'm going to put two graphs side by side. And then we're going to have the single flour producing firm right next to it. So we're going to put our supply and demand over here. And these two determined that our price is 160. So we're going to feed that right over so that our price is 160. And now we have our demand curve. And our demand is our marginal revenue because price equals marginal revenue. So we've got our price line, our demand curve, our marginal revenue curve, all in one handy dandy little curve. And actually, this is also equal to average revenue. Not that we're going to use average revenue. But average revenue is just total revenue divided by output. And it's always going to come back to the price. So if you want to throw that on there too, you can. And let's now put on our marginal cost curve. And we know that this is at 160. So let's look at our numbers. Under, finally meets it and then over. Okay. So looks like a Nike swoosh. That's the other thing. It falls and then it rises. So we still got our Nike swish U shape. Under, over. Okay. Looks like that. And these two marginal revenue equals marginal cost at 6 tons of flour. Now, I would like to be able to visually show my profit on this graph, the way I was able to visually show my profit on this graph. But we need one more piece of information to do that. And what we need is our ATC. Okay. If I want to do a visual representation of my profit on this particular graph, I need my ATC. And so we're going to go back to our table and we're going to add our average total cost to our table, which is just total cost divided by output. No marginals for averages. So we're just going to take the numbers in this column and divide by the output numbers. So 200 divided by 0 is not calculable. 260 divided by 1 is 260. 300 divided by 2 is 150. 325 divided by 3 is 108 and some change. 400 divided by 4 is 100. 500 divided by 5, another 100. 660 divided by 6, 110. And 910 divided by 7 is 130. Okay. So let's look at these numbers. And they're nice and U-shaped, well-behaved. They fall and then they start to rise. Okay, so it's going to be U-shaped. And it starts above the ATC, but quickly ends up below the ATC. So I'm going to come over here and I'll draw it in a slightly different color so you can see it. So it starts somewhere up here. Remember, the ATC falls until it hits the marginal cost curve, and then it's going to start to go up on the other side. So our ATC is going to look something like that. One point above, and then the rest of it is below our price line of 160. And all we care about, though, is what is happening at the desired level of output, which is 6. So I've got my big dot here where MR equals MC at 6 tons, and I'm just going to go straight down from there and draw another big dot on the ATC because I want to be able to see that point over here. Okay. And so our ATC, I want that number. So back to my table at 6 tons, my average cost per unit is 110. Okay. So I could calculate my profit per ton of output as price minus average total cost. Here's what I sell it for. Here's what they cost me on average. So 160 minus 110 is I am making $50 a ton. Does everybody see where that number came from? Okay, yeah. All right, and then if I want to know my total profit, Well, I'm making $50 a ton and I'm producing 6 tons. So 50 times 6, I'd get my total profit of $300. Okay. So my overall profit could be calculated as price minus the ATC, which is my profit per ton, times the number of tons. Okay, that would be my overall profit. So again, plugging in my numbers, 160 minus 110 times 6, 50 times 6, $300. So 160 minus 110 times 6, that is the area of this rectangle that we have created, isn't it? This formula is doing price minus ATC times quantity. So this rectangle is a graphical representation of my $300 of profit. Which is exactly what we calculated profits should be at 6 tons. So this is the graph I want you to know. This is how we are going to be graphically representing profit for perfectly competitive firms. So every single perfectly competitive firm making profits, the graph is going to look like this. And the profit box is always below the price. Okay, so I'm going to add that this firm is making profits. Okay, the profit box is always below that price line, which means our costs were low. Low costs are good. High costs are bad. So these costs are low, they're below the price line, which is what made the box be below the price line, which is good. Because we're going to look at some not profits in just a minute. All right, does everybody feel good about this one? Okay, so let me see, I don't think, oh, I do. So let's go ahead and add something to our chart because we're going to need it for the next problem. We're going to go ahead and add variable cost to our chart. We'll do some math here and then we'll take a quick break. So let's do our variable cost. And our variable cost is just our total cost minus our fixed cost. Okay. So we have our total cost right here. And y'all have already told me that our fixed cost, because when output is 0, we don't have any variable costs. So our fixed cost is 200. So variable cost here is 0. 200 minus 200 is 0. 260 minus 200 is 60. 300 minus 200 is 100. 325 minus 200, 125. 400 minus 200 is 200. 300, 460, and 710. Okay. Everybody see where those numbers came from? We're just subtracting 200 from each one of these numbers because the fixed cost is constant. It's the same 200 no matter what our output is. All right. And now that we've got our variable cost, we can calculate our average variable cost. And our formula for our average variable cost is just our variable cost over output. So we're just going to divide each one of these numbers by the output. So 60 divided by 1 is 60. 100 divided by 2 is 50. 125 divided by 3, 4167. 200 divided by 4 is 50. 300 divided by 5, 60. 460 divided by 6, 7667. And 710 divided by 7 is 101.43. Remember, when you do put decimals, 2 decimal points is good because this is money we're talking about. All right, so now we have our average variable costs. They are nice. It's nice and well behaved. It falls and then it rises. So it is U-shaped. Just a reminder from last lesson, marginal cost is U-shaped because of the law of diminishing marginal returns. And average total and average variable cost get their shape because of their relationship to marginal cost. And so they are also U-shaped because of the law of diminishing marginal returns. Okay, guys, so we will take a quick break. It is 10:30. We're a little early, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. Come back at 10:42 and we'll get back to work. Okay. Okay, guys. Hopefully you're back. I just remembered to start my recording again, so that's good. I have to tell y'all, my dog made me laugh this morning. I'm totally all about Snickers these days, since we're kind of empty nesting. And we moved out of our house. We kind of had a big house on Austin Avenue. And my mom went to a nursing home or assisted living, and Carter went to college. And so it was just the two of us kind of rambling around in this big house. So we finally decided, and it was old and needed a ton of work, to downsize into a smaller house. So we've got this relatively small little 3-bedroom, 2-bath house now. And our dog is huge. She's 83 pounds. She's a big old chocolate lab. And so her bed is huge. So we have our bed set up. Normally it's under my desk right here where I'm working. But every now and then, if we're sitting in another room for a long time, we'll haul our bed into the other room. But we don't want to have more than one bed because it's so big. It takes up so much room. So my husband on Saturday had hauled the bed into the front room because we were in there reading and doing stuff Saturday and Sunday. And he forgot to bring the bed back. So this morning, as I'm starting to get settled in here, She came in, she went under the desk, she looked, there's no bed, and she came out and she stared at me. And then she went back under the desk, came back out and stared at me until stupid mom got the message, go get the bed and bring it. And she is happily under the bed, under the desk now in her bed. Because this is where she likes to be when I'm teaching. My husband's at work today. And so she is going to be in whatever room I am all day long. And so she is down there. I'm going to try to see if I can show y'all Snickers. We can get it to. She's so dark and her bed is brown. I don't think y'all can see her, can you? Anyway, so she's. Nope, it's just too dark. There's no sunlight today because of the possible rain. But
We
anyway,
could see her. We could see her a little bit.
yeah, she's dark. She's impossible to take good pictures of unless you're outside too, because she blends with everything in our house. So anyway, that's my giant chocolate lab. And she is the spoiled diva princess of the house. We've been getting up early before class and walking, and she's going to be 13 Memorial Day. So she's getting old, especially for such a big dog. And so she's down to where she can only walk like a little less than a mile. But man, if you try to get ahead of her, she is going to edge you out until she gets ahead, because she is definitely in charge and the alpha. So that's my Snickers girl. But thankfully she hadn't barked a lot during class. Usually if the bug man comes to do the yard or the True Green people come to do the yard, she goes nuts, but they haven't come during class time. Oh yes, if you want to show your dogs, you are welcome to show your dogs. I love to see everybody's dogs. Last year we did a birthday party for Snickers since she was turning 12. This year she's turning 13. So if y'all want to do a birthday party at the end of the week, we can do a birthday party if you want. And y'all could bring your dogs. And I'll try to get a better shot of Snickers. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get back to work here. Sorry, we can't sit and chat with dogs all day. All right. So this firm that we just did was lucky. Supply and demand were such that the price was $160 that allowed this firm to make a profit, because they can't do a thing about the price. All they can control is their quantity. So they were very, very lucky. Well, we're going to say that something happened in the market either supply increased or demand decreased, but something, there we go, something happened. So here we have our flower market. But now our price has dropped to $75. So it could have been a decrease in demand and increase in supply. We don't know. But now our price is $75. And so our perfectly competitive firm is going to have to just take that price. So that now is our demand. That's our marginal revenue. It's even our average revenue. So I'm going to go ahead and add that one this time. Okay. Now, that is the only thing that has changed is the price. Our costs have not changed. So this has changed, this has changed, but everything else on the table is exactly the same, okay? So our costs have not changed. Yeah, on that one too. Our costs have not changed, which means our marginal cost, our average total, variable, average variable, none of that has changed. Okay. So now we're looking at a price line at 75. And here's our marginal cost relative to the price line. It starts below 75, but it pretty quickly goes above. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that on my picture. Okay. And now we're comparing 75. Sorry, she's making noises now. We're comparing 75 to each one of these marginal costs. So our revenue is 75, our cost is 60, we produce. Our marginal revenue for the second one is 75, this one costs 40, we produce. Revenue 75, cost 25, produce. And here at 4 tons, they are equal. So marginal revenue equals marginal cost right here at 4 tons. Okay, so different outcome because our revenues are different. So we want to depict our profit. Let's go ahead and put our ATC on there, but look what happens this time. Our price line is at 75, but look at our numbers. Every single one of these is above 75 now. So when I draw this picture, my whole ATC curve is going to be above this price line. It's going to look something like this now. This is red, but it looks orange, doesn't it? Okay, and again, all we care about is what is the ATC at our output of 4. So we're going to go straight up from our big dot there at 4 and put a dot on our ATC. And at 4 tons of output, our average total cost is $100. Okay, I'm just getting it off the table. So let's bring that over. ATC equals $100. Okay. So this time we're going to do our formula. Price minus ATC times Q. And what we're going to get is 75 minus 100 times 4. So we are losing $25 a ton times 4 is we're losing $100 negative. Put a big negative on that one. So this distance from here to here is that negative 25. And this distance is our 4. So I'm going to shade in this rectangle. And this is a visual representation of those losses. All right, so as I said, the loss box is above the price line because costs are high. High costs bad for business, right? So our costs are high, which means we're making losses. All right, so this is a perfectly competitive firm making losses. But we need to decide, all right, we got two things that are different. One, in the short run, all we can do is either produce or not produce. Those are our choices. We can either produce or not produce. If we don't produce, we call it temporarily shutting down. Okay. And we are in the short run. These are short run graphs. So we can either produce or not produce. Not producing is called temporarily shutting down. We can only exit the industry or go out of business in the long run. Okay. So what's happening right now is we have losses. And tomorrow the price hasn't changed. It's still going to be $75. So we have to decide, are we going to produce today with this price of $75 or not? Okay. Because we can't go out of business. If this continues day after day after day, we can put a for sale sign in front of the business, and that's the long run. We put the for sale sign, we're going to exit the industry. But every day we have to make the decision, do we produce today or not, because it didn't sell yesterday. Okay, that's the difference between the short and the long run. Short run, day to day, we got to decide produce today or not. Long run, put the sign out front, we're going out of business. But until it sells, every day we have to decide produce today or not. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so we have to decide, is it worth it for this firm to produce these 4 tons of flour and lose $100? Well, what is their cost if they produce 0? their cost is $200, right? If they produce 0, they would lose $200. Right? So if they temporarily shut down, they would lose $200, which is their fixed cost. Remember, you can't escape your fixed cost in the short run. If they produce the 4 tons, they lose $100. I don't know about you guys, but if I'm going to make a loss, I'd rather lose $100 a day than $200 a day. So I'm going to say, let's produce. Y'all agree with me? We may decide to put the sign out front, but until it sells, we got to make a decision. Lose $200 today or lose 100, and I'd rather lose 100 today. Okay, so this firm should keep producing. Okay, because if we didn't, we'd lose all of our fixed costs. All right, so the practical way, or the way to graphically show whether we should produce or not, is we're going to have to put this ABC curve on. Okay. We need to show the ABC curve on our graph. And if we look at it, we know our price line is at 75. And most of this ABC curve is under 75 until we get to the tail end here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and draw it on my graph. I'm going to do it in the screen. So most of it's under, falls until it hits the marginal cost. Then it rises and it's going to get closer and closer to that ATC as output goes up. And all we care about is what is our ABC at 4 tons. Okay. So I'm going to put a big dot there. I'm going to go ahead and bring this over. And at 4 tons, our average variable cost is $50. All right, so want to remind y'all, average variable cost is how much did the labor and materials cost per ton? How much did the labor and materials cost per ton? So per ton of flour, our workers and buying the wheat cost us $50 a ton. Well, we got to sell it at $75 a ton. So what that means is we were able to pay for all of our workers and our materials, and we still had $25 a ton left over to pay part of those fixed costs. Y'all see that? We were able to use our revenues to completely pay the workers and for the materials. And we had a little bit of money left over for some of those fixed costs. We had $100 left over at the end of the day. And so instead of losing 200, we paid down part of the fixed cost and only lost 100. So now our rule, so we're going to keep producing, and the reason we're going to keep producing is because P is greater than our average variable cost. So we are going to slightly modify our golden rule. Remember, our golden rule is find the output where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So we're going to now look at our loss minimizing rule. So 1, find the output where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's step 1. Step 2, profit or loss. Okay. If it's a profit, great. Stop. If it's a loss, compare price to our average variable cost. If P is greater than ABC, go ahead and produce, lose less than our fixed cost. Okay. And if P is less than ABC, temporarily shut down. And lose all fixed costs. So this is our golden rule. If we find where MR equals MC and we're making a profit, great, we're done. But if we're making a loss, now we have to look at the ABC relative to the price. All right, so that we've got 2 graphs now. We've got your perfectly competitive firm making profits. Now we've got your perfectly competitive firm making losses, but you should keep producing. So we got one more. Let's do our perfectly competitive firm. Losses. Shut down temporarily. Because that's all we can do because this is short run. So what's going on here is our price is super low. So I'm going to draw it super low. That's our demand. That's our marginal revenue. That's even our average revenue. We got our MC somewhere along here. And then our AVC, or ATC, sorry, way up high up here. And our AVC, everything's above the price line. I'm not even going to put a dot on this graph. This is shut down. When both costs are above the price line, we know to shut down. And our losses, we can't graphically show them, but we know that they're equal to our fixed cost. All right, we got a couple more things to do before we are done. Those 3 graphs are the 3 graphs I need you to know how to recreate for perfect competition. So your not quiz 3, but quiz 4 will have some short answer problems where you need to do all of this work, where you're going to calculate the tables, figure out whether you're making a profit or a loss, draw the appropriate graph for the data that you have, whether you're making a loss produced, a loss shut down, okay? And then tell me how much the profit or loss is, and show me the profit or loss on the graph if you can. Okay, there will be some short answer along those lines for your 4th quiz. Yeah, that'll be your 4th quiz. Okay, is everybody okay with that? Okay. There are some really good practice problems for your quiz and quiz prep on Canvas that will give you some practice working with this. It starts in chapter 7. You'll do the table part in the chapter 7 quiz prep, and then that information will continue to be used in chapter 8 quiz prep. Okay, so we'll use the same problem. We'll just keep going with it. Okay. Oh, want to show you like this problem here. Marginal cost crosses the price twice. Sometimes that happens. If this were not a loss, a shutdown situation, if you have a place where price and marginal cost are equal in 2 spots, which I think one of your practice problems might have, then you need to check and see which one makes more money. Okay, check them both. Calculate the profit for the output here and the output here. And if they were making positive profit, see which one makes more, or see which one makes the smaller loss. Okay, because that will happen occasionally with a problem. Okay. So we're going to take all this information that we've been using, and we're gonna put it all together for a minute. All right, so I'm gonna draw some cost curves here. I'm gonna make this kind of big because there's gonna be a lot going on in this graph. Oh, the other thing I wanted to show you, sorry, is you only need the ABC if you're making losses. Here where we're making profits, you did not have to show the ABC curve. You only need to put the ABC curve on when we're making losses, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and draw on my cost curves first. So this is my marginal cost. I'm gonna kind of try to exaggerate a little bit my distances and things. Here's my ABC. Here's my ATC. Okay. And let's say market conditions in this industry are pretty bad. And the prices right now are P1. If the price is P1, how much should this firm produce? didn't produce anything, right? ABC is way up here. We don't want to produce at D at price 1. So at price equals P1, produce 0. Okay. So let's say market conditions improve a bit. The price goes up a little bit. And now the price is P2. All right, what's happening at P2? Should we produce or not? Anybody got some votes on produce or not? Or can you tell me what's happening if we produce? Exactly. Whether we produce or not, when the price is just equal to the ABC here, we're going to lose our fixed cost no matter what. So we are indifferent between producing 0 or we'll call it Q2, I'm sorry, because it's price 2. Because either way, we are losing all of our fixed cost. And so we call this point right here the shutdown point. Because we could produce or not, we don't care, because either way we're losing our fixed costs. So we could produce this Q2 or not, we don't care. Now, market conditions improve again. And now the price rises to P3. Okay. Are we going to want to produce or not produce at price P3? We want to produce, and what are we going to lose if we produce relative to P2? We're going to lose less than our fixed cost. I didn't mean a real number, just. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and produce this Q3. So at price is equal to P3, produce Q3, lose less than our fixed cost. Okay. Market conditions improve again. Y'all have to be impressed with my masterful drawing and hitting these right on the money. Okay. What's happening at P4? We know we want to produce, right? What's our profit at P4? where the price is just equal to the ATC. Okay, Devin calls it break even. Do y'all agree with Devin? Y'all should. Okay, so break even means zero profit. Okay. But we're talking about economic profit. I'm going to add that little word, econ. And Devin is exactly right. This point 2 here, is called the break-even point. And we're breaking even because we're doing as well in this industry as our second best choice. Whatever we're doing here, we're doing as well at this as whatever else we could be doing. All right. And one more change in our market conditions. Now we're at P5. What's happening at P5? Revenue, but really it's profit. So we definitely want to produce at price P5, we want to produce this output level of Q5 because we are making positive econ profit. Yay, we really like P5. Okay. So just want to read this back to you a little bit. At P2, we would either produce 0 or Q2. So we would start production right at this point, maybe just a tiny bit past that point. At P3, these firms are willing and able to produce Q3. At P4, firms are willing and able and want to produce and provide Q4 to the market. At P5, firms would be willing, able, and happy to give us Q5. What does that sound like I'm saying? At these different prices, firms are willing and able to what? These different quantities. What does that sound like? Yes, thank you. It's supply. So what we've just done is we have just traced out this firm's supply curve. It is the portion of the marginal cost curve above the ABC. So here's my ABC. So all of this is our firm's supply curve. Okay. The portion of marginal cost that lies above the ABC is the firm's supply curve. So you didn't even know it was there, but it's been there all along. It's been part of this graph, the firm supply curve. And then what we do, y'all, this is so cool to me. This is what makes economics so beautiful and why I'm such an economics nerd. But we take firm 1 and firm 2 plus n more firms, each one of those firms with their own supply curve, and we add them all up plus all those other firms, and we get that market supply. Okay. The market supply we're talking about is this one. So information from the firms is feeding back to the market, and then the market is feeding the firms the prices. And then the firms are feeding back their information about their supply. And again, the firms are feeding the market. I mean, it's a beautiful relationship between the firms and the market with constant feedback between all the firms and the market. It's beautiful. I love it. So information is always moving in these markets, in these perfectly competitive markets. Okay, so I want to move into the long run. Okay. So everything we've done, if you want to go back and label those 3 graphs, profits, losses keep producing, and losses shut down, those are all short run graphs. And the way we know that is because we have 2 cost curves. We are separating our variable and our total costs because they're separated by the fixed cost. But in the long run, there are no fixed costs. Okay, so those were all short run, 3 short run graphs in perfect competition. But now we're going to move to the long run. All right. In the long run, firms can enter or exit markets. Okay. So those low barriers to entry will allow firms to enter or exit these markets in the long run. Okay. So here's what's going to happen. Let's say we are in our little industry and we're just earning a normal profit, which means 0 economic profit. But we're watching the guy down the street who's in a different industry, a perfectly competitive industry. He's earning positive profits. How hard is he working? I don't know, probably pretty hard, but so am I, and I'm making 0 profits. Can can I enter his market if I want to? Yeah, nothing's keeping me out, okay? So when firms in perfect competition make positive profits, this will attract new firms to enter that industry because of the low barriers to entry, low or no. Okay. So low barriers to entry, positive profits, attracting new businesses. All right, so let's start with our perfectly competitive firm. Darn. Okay. Ignore that because I want to do two graphs side by side. And I did that right in the center. Because I want to do the market here and the perfectly competitive firm here. All right. So I'm going to put my price and my quantity. There we go. All right, I want to show positive profits. So I need to beat my price to be higher than my costs. There we go. Okay. So here I am making my positive profits. I'm going to show my little profit box. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Go down to the ATC curve. There's my little profit box. But this profit is going to cause other firms to enter the market. Now, perfect competition, remember, if it's just one little firm that enters, nothing's going to happen to this supply curve because the firms are just too small, the market's too big. But if a bunch of firms enter this market, we will start to see this supply curve shifting to the right. Okay, but it's got to be a bunch. So many firms enter because of the profit. And our supply curve will shift to the right. Okay. So we're going to have firms entering, and that's going to shift our supply curve to the right. All right, and that's going to lower our price. But look what's happening. Here's where we would produce now. We produce a little bit less, but we are still making a positive profit. It's smaller, but it's still there. And so as long as there's profit, we're going to have more firms enter the market. When will the firms stop entering the market? When the profit's zero. Exactly. Okay. So where does the profit go to zero? The profit goes to zero when the price gets to this price. So we're going to have lots of little shifts of this supply curve until we get to this price of PN, okay, which is going to happen when we finally see the price, when we finally see supply shift all the way to here. So little shifts until we get all the way to there to drive the profit down to zero profit. So supply increases, prices decrease, profits decrease, but as long as prices are profits are positive, more firms enter. The entry finally stops. When the prices are set so that profits are zero. All right, so let's start instead. I'm going to leave that for a second for you guys. All right, let's say instead our firms started off making losses. So there's our market. There's our firm. All right, so our firm started off making losses. All right, so we were producing here. And we got this nice big box of losses. And when this happens, if firms are making short run losses, then some of those firms are going to put this for sale sign out front. Okay, so they're going to exit the industry completely when they're making losses. And when they do, that's going to, oh, sorry, forgot to put that. when enough firms exiting, that's going to decrease the supply curve, which will start to increase the price. Okay. So I see our price start to go up. Going to see our loss just got smaller, but we still have a loss. Exit will stop when our price is high enough. To result in zero. Okay, so that'll finally happen when we get our prices to here, which will be supply shifting to there. All right, so in the long run, perfectly competitive firms make zero economic profit. It sucks to be perfect competition. Okay. But don't forget, zero profit means, hey, they're doing as well at this as anything else they can do. So it's not terrible. And every now and then prices fluctuate enough to allow them to make a profit. So what our graph looks like for long run perfect competition let's clean up all of our graphs that we've been doing. Just going to put a star, meaning that's the right level of output. So there's our ATC. And this is a long run graph. So we can go ahead and show the long run average cost curve on there as well. Perfect competition in the long run minimizes both the ATC and the long run average cost. And so what's happening is perfectly competitive firms are incredibly efficient. They can produce more cheaply than any other kind of firm. And the reason for that is this competition that they face, especially here. If they're making losses, the first firms that are going to exit are the firms with the biggest losses. Those are going to be the least efficient firms. They're going to be driven out of this industry because if you have higher costs, you're going to be losing more money. So by the time we get down to zero profit, the only thing left are the very efficient firms. So perfect competition, very, very efficient. All right. This is the fourth graph you need to be able to recreate for this chapter. So the 3 short run graphs with profit, losses, and losses shut down, and now this long run graph. Okay, but I want to go back to the PowerPoint, so I want to just make sure everybody's got that down. Okay, we did a lot today. I'm sure y'all, your little brains are going, yes, we sure did. But let me go through all these slides to get to where we are right now. Okay. Okay. So perfect competition is perfect. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be comparing our other 3 market structures back to perfect competition. And perfect competition has 2 kinds of efficiency. The one I was just referring to is productive efficiency, where the firms that are in the industry are going to be producing at the lowest costs. They are as efficient as they can be. They have lowered their costs because that's the only way they make money, is if they keep their costs super low. Otherwise, they're in trouble. So they're going to be the cheapest way to produce output. And then they also have this thing called allocative efficiency. And allocative efficiency means we allocate the goods appropriately, which is mean we distribute the goods to the people in the most maximizing way for society. So basically what that means is by dividing up the goods so that, oh, I don't have it, so that supply equals demand, that market supply equals demand. That means we're selling where marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost, because supply is marginal cost, demand is marginal benefit. If we sell that way, then we are selling to the people in the most fair way we can. That's basically what allocative efficiency means. People are getting the quantity they want at the prices they want them. Okay. So perfect competition gives us the highest level of consumer satisfaction or consumer surplus that we can get. Consumers are getting the maximum amount of consumer surplus out of perfect competition. Let me go back to my thing. So remember, there's our equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Remember the area under the demand curve and over the price, this is consumer surplus. And so this consumer surplus is as big as it can be. But we also have this other area. This area below the price and above the supply curve. This triangle. So the supply curve shows the minimum at which a firm is willing to sell, but as a part of the market, they can sell it for more than the minimum. And so they are also earning surplus. So this is our producer surplus. The area under the price and over the supply curve. So firms also earn surplus, and so is our producer surplus maxed in perfect competition. Okay. So economic welfare, which means how well off are we as a society? Is measured by economists as consumer surplus plus producer surplus. Okay, and so both of these are maximized. So our economic welfare under perfect competition is as large as it can be. And so we're going to use perfect competition as our benchmark, and we're going to compare everything right back to perfect competition. Okay, that was another really heavy day, guys. Friday was a heavy day. This was a heavy day. It should get a little bit easier to get through these chapters now that we've gotten through a lot of this. We're going to go through some table stuff with Monopoly, and then we're going to be able to pull back just a bit and not have to go as deep for the remaining material. But Monopoly is kind of a fun chapter, so that'll be what we do next. But so this was chapter 8. Your homework for chapter 6 and 7 is what is due tonight, though. And your quiz tomorrow opens up on 6 and 7. And there are practice problems in the exam prep, but there won't be any short answer problems on your quiz. All right, any questions about anything? Because that was a lot today. We took everything we learned on Friday and applied it today. So I'll hang around for a little bit if you have questions. I'll sit here for a few minutes, but thanks for y'all hanging in there today. And it'll start to get a little bit easier as we move forward. All right, so y'all have a great day. Enjoy this beautiful weather. I don't know where y'all are, but it's so cool and nice out here. So go outside before you do your homework. All right, see y'all later.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, what did you say we find the practice problems again?
So look in Canvas under quiz prep problems. So they're in each, I have problems for each quiz module.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'll go on.
Thank you.
I have a question on the quizzes, or it's not to do with the questions, but so like, let's say you make like a 44 out of 51, which is like an 86, but when you're like calculating the grade, will it be like a 44 out of 50?
Yes, it will be out of 50.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's meant to be some extra credit.
I have a question about the homeworks.
Uh-huh.
After they've already been like due, is there
Mhm.
any way we can go in and like practice them some more or anything like that?
Yeah, I just need to go in and change the dates, so you can go in and do them. So, I'll do that today, for the homeworks that you've done
Mm-hmm.
and change those dates so you can go back and look at those.
Okay, thank you.
If I don't remember, remind me to keep doing that as we get through the due dates. And I
Yes,
will.
ma'am.
Okay.
All right. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Okay, I'm gonna assume everybody asked their questions.